Welcome back to the Very Backbenchers. This is our third episode. I'm Taylor, and as always, I'm joined by Alex.
Vamos.
Today, we're going to be taking a little look into reform and the Greens. So I think it'd be very good if we do an episode just taking a deep dive into both of those, what the leaders stand for, as they're both on immense rises in their popularity. But firstly, actually, what I wanted to do was talk about the unemployment rate. Obviously, that's just hit a new high today. So we're recording this on Tuesday, the 11th of November. And it's come out that unemployment is now at 5%, the highest since COVID, since the summer of COVID, 2020. So, I mean, just thoughts on that and where's the blame lie?
Let's give a little background. I think it's pretty predictable that this has happened, probably because of the tax rises Reeves has done, employers' national insurance. This sort of stuff is inevitable, but also probably with the increasing use of AI, automation, a lot of entry-level roles. We've touched on graduates struggling to find jobs, and these are the roles that are being AI automated. So I think a combination of increasing AI use, but also the tax rises we've seen and potential greater tax rises we will get in the next budget.
And of course, obviously, there's further tax rises to come, but I think these are more employee side. So economic theory tells us as people's tax burden rises, they will try and work more. But whether those jobs are there to be worked, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, and I think in the UK, what we've seen, and I've read articles on the skills mismatch in the UK, there's a lot of overskilled workers, a lot of people with degrees.
Yeah.
I think it's increased to 42% of people our age have degrees in the current age. So on the surface, it's a lot of people who are overqualified for an availability of jobs that don't match that skill set.
I mean, how was your placement search going?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually been all right, but like on the most, it's quite demoralising. A lot of people around me have been struggling, even with simple communication aspects. And I think the roles we're applying for are obviously entry-level roles, ones that chatbots can do. So it's a tough gig, but I think the message behind it is just embracing it. You can't not.
Embrace it, yeah. Don't just blame it, mate. Don't just blame it for the reason you've not got a placement.
Exactly. That's the only reason.
I feel like you probably wouldn't have one anyway. Yeah. I'm only joking. Anyway, right, we'll start with the first bit we wanted to talk about, which was the BBC scandal.
Yeah,
so we thought we'd do a quick 10-15 minutes and discuss what's happened here. So the facts, here we go, let's start. 2021, Donald Trump did a speech just before the infamous January 6th riots at the White House after the election result in which he lost and claimed it was stolen. He then made a speech. BBC took the footage and spliced two clips together, which essentially paints the picture that he was making a direct call for violence on the Capitol. People still interpret it that he did call for violence, but this clip makes it so clear he was after violence, right? It didn't happen. So the top two employed people are the Director General and the CEO of the BBC have both resigned. And now the question turns, I mean, the first question I want to ask you about it is, was this an editorial mistake or was this part of something deeper? Was this some sort of political agenda pushing at the BBC? I mean, what do you think?
Let's not get this twisted. This is an absolute calamity from the BBC.
Yeah.
Complacency at its finest, and we don't know whether it would have been an editorial issue or a systemic issue, but I've read statements. It seems that was it the CEO and the chair?
The Director General, yeah.
Director General has stepped down, suggests that it is more so covering up and having accountability for the issue. So I think that also speaks volumes that it is actually this systemic issue, not just an editorial issue.
Yeah, this isn't the first time that people have stepped down from the BBC covered in disgrace and scandal, right?
Yeah.
I'm of the opinion that the BBC obviously should be at the most independent news source in the world, right? As far as I'm concerned, it is mandatory to pay for the BBC should you own a TV license. You pay for the TV license. That's what helps fund it. To have these sort of things is an absolute disgrace. I mean, it is disgraceful, whatever their opinion of Trump, whatever this editor's opinion of Trump. And I'm with you that, I'm not going to sit here and say Trump didn't call for violence there, because it can definitely be interpreted in that way and the resulting events show that, right? But what I will say is an absolute disgrace is the fact that people were editing this to make it look even more so the point. An absolute disgrace. And I think So, I mean, you've got two people resigned. I think there's probably going to be further.
So it brings the wider question, the future of credibility for BBC. Has this happened before? Are other news agents doing it? Obviously, this is more impactful because it's directly taxpayer money.
Yeah.
And to see this is where our tax money is going on the BBC to produce false claims and false news is, I don't know, as the British public, it...
Questions whether we should be paying for it.
Of course.
And this is what I posed to you earlier, and I want to touch back on it today, as in yesterday when we were chatting. Let's not pretend that this is the only example of bias. We've had, GB News exists and they are heavy right-wing favourability, as well as the Daily Mail. But these are private companies. So I'm of the opinion that, there's journalistic standards. They have to uphold integrity and facts. But they can put that spin on it if they want to. The BBC cannot, right? They cannot do that whatsoever because that absolutely just, destroys the whole underlying point of having a state-funded independent news agency.
Yeah, and let's not get it twisted. News outlets are meant to be neutral. They're meant to be independent, not form an opinion within themselves.
Well, private news outlets can form an opinion.
That's what I was about to go on to. So that's the basis of journalistic law, as well as not naming your sources, various other things. But we've seen media have such a massive role in politics, and maybe too much of an arm in politics, a lot of people would argue. We've seen Rupert Murdoch over the years influence many an election. We've seen Trump try to sue Murdoch and varying news outlets in America, and is looking to do so in the BBC as well, I think for $1 billion. So, and the rise of Oracle owner, I can't remember his name, but it looks like he's got CBS, CNN. Seems to be a lot of key players controlling the media and controlling what people are seeing. So is this actually a systemic issue that this BBC issue has brought to light, or is it just the BBC hold themselves accountable?
But
is it
again,
just an individual
I know
owner?
you're touching on these, Rupert Murdoch and what was the American company? You said Oracle.
Oracle owner, yeah.
But where I disagree and where we shouldn't, if you look at GB News and you think, I don't like that piece they did about Starmer or Polanski, I'm not going to watch it. You can never follow it on Instagram, never, subscribe to YouTube, all of that, right? Which of course you can do with the BBC. But with the BBC, you have to pay for that. You own a TV, you have to pay that license which funds that company, right?
Yeah.
You can unsubscribe from any of these except the BBC. I think it has to be, if GB News have a integrity standard of 60%, BBC has to be 100%. They cannot be posting anything biased.
I understand the salience is amplified by BBC being funded by taxpayer money, but do you not think morally all news outlets should remain neutral and not spread misinformation? Not saying that any are, we wouldn't know until further research has been done, but from inferences we can make from certain articles, they're definitely leaning one way, and could be a lot of edit issues within their videos, we don't know.
And I think the leaning part is fine. I think
Yeah.
it's tough to do that. I mean, you even probably think about journalists that exist in the BBC. Most people that are involved with the news are going to have some sort of political affiliation.
Yeah.
But there needs to be some form of tougher checks, better background on people. If someone's been a member of a party for 20 years, should they be writing articles at the BBC about politics, right? I just think that they have to be held to the highest standard out of anyone because, well, we pay for it.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to lead on to is, what does this look like for the future of the BBC? Do we think that the license fee is always going to be mandatory and that people do have to pay for it? Or are people now they've had enough? Are they thinking, I'm not doing this?
I think there will be some people that think that way, but if we look at the wider TV BBC gives us, there's so many different aspects to it, not just the news. They are good at...
I'm not sure. They got second-rate football, but...
Yeah. But they host Wimbledon, they do a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Like the BBC Sport is good, it's informative, they produce it well. News is always a hot topic, it's always going to be tough to navigate, you're always going to make some errors. But fundamentally, the fact that BBC is funded by the taxpayers makes this issue massive. So we want to pose the question in the comments, does this ruin the credibility of the BBC for the future? And what does this mean for wider news outlets and the emphasis on not spreading mis and disinformation?
And the last thing I want to put to this topic is, and I think we should both answer this, is if this was the other way around, maybe not Joe Biden, but maybe Keir Starmer or Jeremy Corbyn, right? And the BBC or any news company that was state run essentially or funded basically tried to insinuate that something was said that wasn't, or well, very clearly doing that, I think the uproar would be immense.
Yeah,
And
no.
I don't know that. It's just a feeling. But I think if people tried to go after Polanski, for example, he's rising in the polls. I think it would be absolute insane uproar that maybe we're not seeing right now.
Is the BBC a public company? Is it in the public sector? Would it count as?
I don't, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
us at the very backbenchers, I don't know that.
Yeah,
But
good point.
I know it's obviously not run by the government in charge because that
Yeah.
would be crazy. But it's funded through.
I'm alluding
Taxpayer.
to, is the BBC pushing a narrative on behalf of government is basically where I'm going.
Well, they're completely separate, right? So
Yeah.
while it's funded, it's not like Keir Starmer has someone in his cabinet overlooking the BBC, right?
Yeah.
So no, but I just think it's the natural opinion of these journalists, and it's coming across in some of their work. This being the most extreme example we've probably seen in a while. So now we're getting to today's main argument. We want to talk about Nigel Farage and Zach Polanski. So two people who've been absolutely surging in the polls. I mean, there's some polls that have Green Party in second. So I want to start with an overview of both people. I don't want to talk their policies. I want to talk them. And I think if we start with Nigel Farage, he's obviously been in the news a bit longer. Polanski's a recent 2-month phenomenon. But yeah, your opinions on Nigel Farage in a brief, summary. And yeah, let's hear it.
So my opinions on Nigel Farage is a populism chaser. Ever since founding UKIP in the early 2010s, I think, or late noughties. Been on an immigration bandwagon since then. He then jumped on the EU referendum bandwagon, has been on the cost of living bandwagon, and tries to basically appeal to anything the government is doing wrong, or
The mass issue, yeah.
yeah, and is trying to be the nice uncle, the good cop
Yeah.
in every situation, which isn't actually possible, I don't think. And now we're seeing the populism again with stopping the small boats, and the cost of living crisis by his pledges to cut all the taxes.
Yeah, and obviously we'll get back to their policies with the taxes. I think he has, retracted that and said that was more aspirational.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I agree in a sense that obviously he always seems to be talking about whatever is the hottest topic, whether that's him pushing the topic, which makes it the hottest, or jumping on it after. I mean, he obviously does seem to be pretty bothered about illegal immigration and immigration. I think he's a clear speaker. He's very passionate. Sometimes I see Keir Starmer speak and I think, I don't really know what he stands for and if he really cares about what he stands for. I watch Farage, and we'll say Polanski in a second. Even if you disagree with it, you know exactly what he stands for, right? This bloke is building his whole campaign on the immigration is the forefront topic, right?
Yeah, but you know what he wants you to see him as, if that makes sense. He wants everyone to see him as this cool, calm, collected, passionate person. But no one knows what's the deeper meaning behind his actions. Is it personal gain? We've seen a lot of ex-prime ministers, maybe even Keir Starmer's doing it now, sacrificing the public for personal interests and their future career developments. And I think Farage has built a living off that, to be quite honest.
So I suppose we'd have to wait and see. Obviously, if there's an election tomorrow, most polling sites have that he would win a majority. But you're saying we can't know until we've seen it, basically, what he would be like genuinely.
No, and you wouldn't know. This is the first time he's been a member of parliament.
Yeah.
Reform was set up post-COVID. It's a very infant new party with many lacking experience, especially in the House of Commons. So pragmatically, would they be successful? Only time will tell.
Yeah.
But from the outside looking in, I can say from my point of view, I would say no. And this is why they're relying on a lot of conservative defects who do have experience, which begs the question to you, if they do get a lot of conservative members coming across who have experience in parliament and the economy, would that make them a more sustainable, potentially prosperous party if they were to be in government?
Well, I think it would show that it's not something new. I mean, people obviously, it showed in the last general election, are sick of the Conservatives, as it's been shown. I think there will be a bounce back in the polls, but they have these people going across. I mean, if it's the same people, then is anything going to be different, really, right? The big change of the past even 6 months has been the pledge by Kemi Badenoch and Nigel Farage to leave the European Court of Human Rights and make immigration, well, for reform it is the number one issue, and Conservatives are obviously pushing their stronger economy, stronger borders. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Honestly couldn't tell you how that's going to run. I could not tell you how it's going to run made up of ex-Conservatives.
Of course. And I guess if they come into power, we'll find out. So let's move on to Polanski.
Yeah.
Give a brief overview, background, maybe some policies, where he's come from, if you would like to lead a bit.
Yeah, so I'll chat a bit. Well, like I said, we'll leave the policy because we're going to break down the policy and politician. But
Sorry, mate.
don't worry, it's all right. I forgive you. But
Thanks.
if we talk Polanski, so Polanski used to be a Lib Dem. I saw an interview with him the other day saying his first ever political debate was against Keir Starmer.
Wow, really?
And he came away from it really siding with the ex-Green Party leader and thinking, this is more where I lie. He went and lived in the US, and he said only until about 2005, he couldn't have told you who the opposition leader was. But then he got involved. He came back, and obviously he was in a big part with Greens, and now he's the leader. He's absolutely surged in the polls. I think a lot of them, around 17%, have Zach Polanski. And I mentioned it a little bit in the previous podcast, and like I say, I'm a member of the Conservative Party. I really like Zach Polanski. And the reason is, I don't like almost any of his policies. We'll get onto that. This bloke speaks incredibly clearly. Any interview I've seen of him, you ask him a question, he's explaining it fully, and he's explaining his rationale behind everything, or just giving a straight answer. You can't say the same for Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
You can't.
The main thing he does is he answers a question directly, doesn't he? We've seen politicians throughout time avoid and deflect questions. Yeah, they failed. So is it a breath of fresh air almost to see a politician acting in this light? To be fair, if we expected any political leader to do it, it would be coming from the left and the Greens to speak openly and coherently and honestly. So on the whole, I'm in complete agreement with you. I think he comes across really well despite some of his ludicrous policies. He is definitely bringing the fight to reform Labour and Tory from a left's perspective.
Yeah.
I recently watched an interview he's done with Trevor Phillips on Sky News about big claims that he would never work in a coalition with Keir Starmer, but would work with Labour. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, interesting. So obviously he says that he would never ever join a coalition, potentially eyeing up that should reform fail to get a majority, maybe Labour and Greens can enter into one. He says Keir Starmer is a man who was complicit in genocide and claims to care about the environment, but doesn't seem to be funding environmental projects. So it's interesting. I mean, to completely rule that out, bear in mind Keir Starmer could still be the leader of the Labour Party in the next election. I don't think he will be, but he might be. To say you wouldn't work with him, that clip's going to resurface in 3 years' time if Greens find themselves in a good position. So interesting. Yeah. But if we then want to get on to some of their policies,
I'll let you take reform.
Well, so I've written down roughly what their positions are, and we can discuss them on what we think. So if we start with immigration, we've got 3 to do. We'll start with immigration. The headlines: reform would leave the ECHR. They would stop all small boats, whether that's through initially just trying to send people back to their country of origin, or placing sanctions on those countries should they refuse to take people back. And the big one, I think, really, is abolishing indefinite leave to remain. And I mean, what do you think on those 3? How do those sit with you?
I think we've seen movements from Labour, questions about adopting Denmark's system. Denmark have a slightly different system to us. I think it involves, if the refugee is fleeing direct war and they are targeted specifically from a certain militant group, then they can claim asylum. However, if not, they only get temporary stay and can then leave. Hence that temporary indefinite. Yeah. So I understand that point of view. The taxes don't think are feasible, and I think it's another populist claim.
And like I say, we'll get onto the economy and those taxes.
Yeah.
For me, the indefinite leave to remain, this is something I can't really get behind. There'd be probably a lot of people that you would be surprised to know they are on indefinite leave to remain as opposed to citizens, which means obviously they've had their visa, they've had that application approved to stay here forever, and to say they would abolish it and change it to a constant visa review system, I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
Their reasoning is they believe that 1/6 of the welfare bill is non-British citizens. So they think that people are coming, not working at all, and just taking from the state. I'm of the opinion that if that is true, if you've got into the country and not wanted to work, not tried to work, then you shouldn't be here, right? There's got to be a different way about going about that. To abolish ILR when many of the best people in the economy have come over and they are on ILR, it seems stupid.
No, yeah, exactly. And how big of a impact immigration has been over the last 50 years and will continue to do so.
Yeah.
We touched on the skills mismatch earlier. I've recently been writing a paper on global talent and how we can attract better talent from other countries, because we've seen developing nations have massive pools of potential which can help and want to contribute to our society and work, contribute to taxes, do all of the above. But under reform doesn't look like that promising and much of a prospect that could happen.
Yeah.
Which seems like both of us.
Yeah. So if we then come on to the green policy, and I think we're both, just to touch back on that, we're both in favour of, immigration, good for a country.
Yeah.
Illegal immigration of undocumented people, bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's a safety concern. It's a concern surrounding the money that's going into asylum hotels. So I think we both agree there. If we move on to the Greens, they would like to end immigration detention. So people come over, they're put into a hotel or wherever, army barracks shortly potentially. They want to end that for everyone unless there is evidence that they're a dangerous person. They want to still, keep them detained. But really, Green's philosophy is that immigration is positive and that we should embrace it as one of our greatest strengths rather than trying to reduce it.
So their open border policy.
Yeah.
I think it might be a bit of a tinfoil hat, a bit of a conspiracy theorist here, but I think with increasing digitalisation over the past 20 years and ever increasing digitalisation, this has also opened up borders and working platforms that people can work remotely and travel everywhere. So there is a possibility in, 50, 100, 150 years where every country adopts an open border system. We're all sort of one nation that travels in between. That's a possibility and a conspiracy, but will that actually happen? I don't think so. The open border policy, I would love to see their implementation plan, how that would be sustainable. Because I imagine if there's a lot of people wanting to come already, if we go, look, our borders are open, anyone can come, I'm sure there'll be a whole lot more people coming. And what people in the UK would have to say about that, but also our public services, how they would be able to sustainably cater for all those people. I think it's definitely a tough gig. And if Polanski came into power, it would have to be revised to some extent, I think, than allowing everyone in and everyone to leave.
And I think where I disagree is, I don't think he's going to win an election on that. The main topic is immigration for people. To say that we really are not bothered about who comes in is not going to be too popular with a lot of people. I think we've both just said that immigration for a country is a good thing, but it must be controlled and vetted, right? Mm-hmm. It can't just be anyone, anytime. So I think that's going to kill their progress in the polls and stop them from potentially winning a majority or something like that, which is, way down the road for Green, but I think this is one of the limiting factors. So, in summary, yes to leaving the ECHR.
I think I'll say yes, but there's other solutions Labour haven't found. If Labour come up with better solutions than the one in, one out France scheme.
What do you think? What's an example? Do you got one to mind? Because this is the argument from Reform and the Conservatives is there isn't another solution that works.
I think there's always other solutions.
But you can't think of one, can you, Alex?
I think there definitely are. There's definitely more agreements that could be in place between willing nations willing to help out.
Right. But let me stop you there.
I think there's a principal aspect of being in the ECHR.
Yeah, but what nation is going to listen to Britain and go, we've received 3,000 of your citizens in the last year, right? Maybe more. You need to take all of them back. No one's going to do that.
You don't know that.
No one's going to do that. Already would have.
And if it does happen, it may come at a cost. In some other aspects, maybe financially, maybe to do with our workforce, letting people from that nation in the country. So ECHR.
I think I've got you here, Alex. To be fair, I think it may be there's no real solution that you're presenting that is an alternative to this. I think.
But if there was a proposed solution over the next 4 years of Labour government, I doubt there will be. So it is leading towards leaving
Yeah.
ECHR. So yeah.
Yeah, so then if we move on to our second sort of policy and ideology discussion, and this is a big one, and again, what I think is a limiting factor for the Greens, defence. So if we look at Reform first, Reform would love to increase our armed forces personnel, so through whatever means that is, more advertising, subsidies, or better payment for these people, right? And also increase our defence spending to 3% down the road. This is not straight away, 2.5% initially, and then 3% later. Thoughts?
I think that specifically is another populist claim. I think he's...
The defence spending?
Yeah, just because I think I'm not opposed to it. I think it could be redirected better in the economy, but I think it's jumping on the Trump bandwagon. I think that's what Farage has done since Trump's come in for his second term. He sort of agreed with everything he said, almost. Yeah. Elon Musk also. We've seen the UK already raise defence spending because of Trump's pressures, almost. Yeah. And I think Farage is doing everything he can to align with Trump, I think, for personal gain.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm going to have to disagree with you there. I think that this is, the period, I'm only 21, right? But that I can remember the highest period of global conflict around. Mm-hmm. We seem to have some sort of temporary ceasefire that looks fragile in Gaza.
Yeah.
Russia aren't slowing down in terms of Ukraine. Yeah, Sudan as well. I just think that, and political violence, I think that to not increase defence spending would be silly. I think it would just be, this is the time where it's been needed most. Yes, a 0.5% increase in defence spending, or 0.5 to 1%, you've got to pay for it, right?
Of course.
So he's not mentioning how he's going to pay for it. I get that. But I think it's not a bad pledge. I don't know.
I wouldn't say it's a bad pledge, but the opportunity costs of other pledges and potentially other initiatives that money could go towards will be forever arguing to the end of time.
Yeah.
But you can't argue against protecting our country and protecting the people within it. At the same time, you need to protect the people within it by spending efficiently and effectively. We're already seeing an economic crisis in the UK. Should more funds be redirected into defence, especially with the tax cut pledge Reform have put forward? So I think it's a lot of, it seems now if they were to get into power, it's a lot of promises they won't be able to keep up with, from my point of view. Taylor?
No, I agree with that as well. I think the tax cuts, obviously he's now said were aspirational at the last general election rather than party policy. And
so would you say initially, bang, let me get people on my side, let me get that populist vote.
Yeah.
As he's realised, wow, people are actually coming to Reform and signing up, now he's closer to government, is he thinking, right,
I've got to be a bit more sensible. Yeah, for sure. And we'll touch on the economy, but if we then look at the Green argument is to leave NATO, to work closer with our European partners and rely less on the US in that sense, and to destroy, abandon, whatever word you want to use, get rid of our nuclear deterrent program, Trident, right?
Mm-hmm.
Zach Polanski in many interviews has said that he believes the only way to denuclearize the world is to take the step in being the first ones to do it.
Mm-hmm. I get it.
I'll let you go first with that. Because, we paid Polanski some compliments earlier. I don't think this is going to be as nice towards him. So let's hear it.
No, it's ludicrous.
Yeah.
Getting rid of your nuclear deterrent system, as we've just touched on with the current geopolitical climate, is probably the silliest thing a country could do. We've seen in that Sky News interview him talking about potentially negotiating with Putin for him to remove
it's insane.
Yeah. I think if we're talking about a pragmatic government, it's not green.
It can't happen. And I think this is where they're going to top out. What did I say they're at right now? 17%?
Yeah.
You can't win the majority in the UK saying that you would abandon our nuclear program.
Can I just ask, as someone not as knowledgeable in this, is why would you? Because the way I see it is, if you remove the nuclear deterrent and every other country does, no one will nuke each other.
Mm-hmm.
But if everyone has a nuclear deterrent, no one will nuke each other. So I don't really get what's the difference between the two situations. Is it money saved? I don't get it.
That's a great point actually, Proddy. I think what governments love and always have done is arms contracts. This has been throughout time. A lot of BAE, massive in the UK, supply defence to varying countries around the world. US do it, I think, the most. So there probably is that aspect of, yeah, if they had no nuclear deterrent or they did, the same ultimate thing will happen of no one actually fighting. But having one can allow governments and companies to make money.
Well, I think just from a different perspective, though, is you're safe, you're right, correct. If everyone has one, no one's going to nuke each other. If no one has one, no one can nuke each other. While only a few players have them, I think 7 countries in total have nuclear weapons. Why would we get rid of ours? Russia or not, Putin's not going to get rid of his nuclear weapons under any circumstance.
Could I also say, I think it was earlier this year, Trump, didn't he bomb Iran because they were building a nuclear deterrent system?
Yes,
or they were
so
building
nuclear
weapons?
where apparently the rumour was Israel told them close to enriching uranium to create nuclear weapons.
So what do you think about US, the biggest nuclear weaponry holders in the world, suppressing other nations from doing the same?
Well, yeah, I think, and we can get into this in another episode, but I think on the surface, the ideal is no one has nuclear weapons, but now some people do. I don't think more is the answer. I think especially from a state like Iran, it's an oppressive state, and I don't think that any good can come out of them having a nuclear weapon.
I do agree with that, but then it's the principle of creating that power gap even wider between the US and these other developing nations who the US throughout the 2000s have been involved in proxy wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam in the 60s, 70s. So is this just America keeping their dominance and wanting to have that global power and suppress everyone else?
It's a good point. It's a good point.
It's a great point.
Yeah. Gas is over. No, I get it.
Yeah.
But no, I think we're both in agreement there with the Greens.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
And sorry, Zach Polanski, is the compliments we paid you earlier.
Yeah, sorry.
I know you're watching.
Yeah.
Absolutely insane. So if we move on to our final discussion point, talking about reform and the Greens, is the economy. So this is one that's changed for reform. They initially said at the 2024 election they'd cut no end of taxes. They said that's not realistic, it was aspirational. And now they've moved to being a bit more sensible. But the one I want to talk about here is their policy on income tax. There's 2. They want to raise the minimum level at which you start paying income tax from £12,500 to £20,000. And they want to raise the higher threshold so less people are paying the top rate of tax. What do you think?
The latter, I think I can get behind. So you're saying the first bit is the personal allowances, basically?
Yeah, increasing the personal allowance to
£20,000.
So the argument is, I can't remember what amount of money it is, but there's a region below £20,000 where if you earn it, compared to someone who is on welfare, they actually get a better deal than you, or slightly worse.
Yeah. So let's not get it twisted. We can't allow the poverty trap to be prominent in society.
No.
We can't allow benefits to overtake minimum wages in the UK.
Of course.
And we can go on to reforms, national minimum wage. Wow, that's a tongue twister. Pledges on national minimum wage. But I think, of course, on the surface, this green policy of lower taxes seems great, right? Seems fantastic. How's it going to happen?
Yeah, so about that £20,000 one, I think that it seems great on the surface. You've obviously got to pay for it, so that's £8,500. Sorry, maths has gone. £7,500 of now untaxed income per person that's earning above 20k. But the argument, you've got to pay for it. You've got to make up for that loss of revenue. But the argument would be then, if you can bring more people off of welfare into the world of work, is that then decreases the welfare bill. So obviously you've got to look at the numbers. I don't know how it matches up, but I actually think on the surface this is quite a good policy if it can be afforded.
But because this policy is put forward by the Greens and
Reform.
This is by Reform.
This is Reform's policy. So Reform want to raise this to 20 grand, not the Greens.
Yeah, right. Okay. So yeah, I'm not going to talk about populism again. I think I've touched on that. But I think, on the surface, it's great, but I don't think it's realistic and will be further retracted closer to the general election.
You think?
Reform.
I think they'll keep it. I think they'll...
I think if they find equitable ways in the economy by which they can raise tax revenue elsewhere, sure. I can get behind it.
Which seems to be the welfare bill. They've dug their teeth into that as much as the Tories have about saying it's too high, people need to come
It's
off of it.
definitely too high, but we can't reduce it to being something that is so minimal that it barely affects people in the economy, as well as we have to have sufficient jobs available and opportunities available for those people coming off welfare to then come into the workforce. No.
Yeah.
So,
No, I agree. But
so there's a lot of contingencies that have to take place, but on the surface, it seems brilliant, but pragmatically, this definitely needs time to develop and find alternatives.
and then on the latter, the policy of decreasing the amount of people that pay the top rate of income tax, I think is a good thing. I think that because look, the way the parties on the left, such as Greens, and we'll get onto it, talk about a wealth tax. The wealth tax is not obviously for income, but for people that are earning over £100,000 or something like that as a doctor or whatever they are, a banker. This is for the top 1%, top 0.5%, right? So I think that making less people pay tax at the top rate, again, needs to be afforded, but less people do pay it. So even though you'd be increasing that, that's not as damning as the increase in personal allowance at the bottom, right?
Yeah, so I think I read the top 25% of earners pay 75% of the tax bill. That's people earning over £45,000.
Right, okay.
I believe. So I think economic theory suggests giving people lower taxes, especially at the higher bracket, increases their productivity and willingness to work more, which emphasises great things for the economy. However, everything's got a balance, and I think we'll find out at a later stage whether that will be suitable.
Yeah.
Cool.
So then if we move on to the Greens,
Yeah.
we'll touch slightly on, because we're going to come back in everyone's little favourite segment, but the wealth tax, that's obviously Greens' main mission, let alone economic mission. That's the main mission, is to reduce wealth inequality. But as well as that, they want increased investment into green infrastructure, which they accuse the current government of not doing so, to increase nationalisation, and to prioritise sustainable growth rather than growth at all costs. So, I mean, if you want to talk about green infrastructure and nationalisation, I mean, what do you think? They're obviously two very expensive things.
I think we align in terms of reducing the role of state in the economy.
Yeah.
So I think nationalising everything. We'll go back to the privatisation of Maggie Thatcher in the 80s and 90s, right? Some things very good, some things such as privatising the railways obviously hasn't worked.
Yeah.
So I definitely think it can be re-looked at, and railways have been renationalised, right? And Labour, I quote, said that they cannot promise to bring any fares down. They'll just stop them going up as quickly as they were, which...
Again, not very popular.
No, of course it's not. They don't help themselves at all. But I'll touch on the wealth tax. I believe it's 2% tax on wealth over 1 billion, and then 1%...
Oh, yes, no, sorry, I've interrupted you. Correct, you're spot on. Sorry, Alex, sorry.
And then 1% tax on wealth over 10 million.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Which has been massively pushed forward in the news over this past 6, 7, 8 months. By Gary Stevenson.
Yeah.
A prominent figure, ex-trader. I think you've read his book.
Yeah.
And he suggests that a wealth tax will redistribute all income from the wealth hoarders, as he so says, in the economy, and redistribute it, which is historically a left ideology, therefore a green ideology.
Yeah.
Do I think this works in an economy? It's way easier said than done.
Yeah.
That's quite obvious.
Yeah. And obviously we'll get back onto the wealth tax.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, you're right. You're just jumping ahead, mate. Just take a touch. No, but I think the point around green infrastructure returns to the point we spoke about in the first podcast, of which I'm of the opinion, why bother? Look at China. Why do we even care, right?
But it's going to be the future. Like, it's going to be at some point.
Is it?
Yes.
What about if China?
These resources are finite.
What about in 10 years if China increase their pollution to 50% of the world's pollution?
That's a different conversation. But we're talking about talking about here and now, no?
That's here and now.
Yeah, that's what you're
here and now. We're in a cost of living crisis.
Yeah.
So why are we bothered about the environment that much?
But just
put your stuff in the recycling bin, right?
Yeah, but we have our pledges. Does it mean we should completely discontinue them? I agree that we should redirect them, into better places. And this 2050 pledge and Green's pledge to 2030, neither of these are feasible. Let's not get that twisted, especially with the current state of the economy.
Yeah.
I do think there should be some reallocation, but the overall project and strategy shouldn't be scrapped.
Yeah, I think that's where we disagree. I don't think scrapped, but I think it should be put heavily on the back burner, or we should be getting into COP30, etc. And I don't know if China turn up to that, but we should be getting to these things, sat around the table saying we need to stop mass polluters, the US included. Bear in mind, they don't pollute as much as China do per capita, right? But that's, I don't know, it's a huge problem. And I just think that if the Green Party got in and chose to redirect our resources there, people are only going to be poorer in the short run because we have to pay for that.
True, and let's not forget, green infrastructure and green initiatives is an industry. It's an industry that's quite fast growing. A lot of people are investing in it and see the future of it. So there's a lot of potential to be at the forefront of a new industry as well.
Yeah,
So seeing tech and
I get it. It's just, I don't know. For me,
don't think
China's
you
just
get it,
too far gone, and it doesn't look like they're turning it around anytime soon.
no.
So,
But
I mean, before we jump into our segment, I think it's best to recap and say, what do we think of both Polanski and Farage? And in particular, I want to frame that in a question on a post. I've seen people say that they are the yin and yang, the left and right, almost similar in their personality, right? And I'll put this to you. They are both clear speakers. They are both passionate. You know what they both stand for. And the difference is Polanski's main thing is tackling wealth inequality. Farage is immigration. What do you think of the fact that they're actually quite similar?
It's very true. They are similar, running completely different narratives. But I would say a subtle difference from my point of view is you said they were both passionate. I agree, but I identify and feel more empathy from Polanski than Farage. Maybe that's because of his history. Polanski has got a questionable history, but nothing to do with Farage's populism. So I think there's only so much credibility in my mind I can give to Farage, which shouldn't negate from the fact he's a brilliant speaker.
Yeah.
He does seem passionate, but I think Polanski identifies with humans better than Farage. But to the mass of the population in the UK, I think would disagree with me on that one.
Yeah, and I think as well, like I said, the hot topic is immigration. Polanski doesn't seem to want to touch on it really, other than say we're sort of open for business. I think that is going to hurt him in 1 year, 2 year, 3 years' time. He's had this initial surge, and I'll be honest with you, he's the first leader of the Green Party I can ever name, right? I wasn't too into politics, a couple of years ago. I couldn't name the Green Party leader then. Leaders, yeah, the co-leaders. But I think it's an interesting one. I think they are probably potentially the new faces of British politics. It's not Keir Starmer, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
But no, it's been interesting, and I've enjoyed talking that through. But if we then go on to our segment. So our first segment, we're still looking for segment suggestions. So if you've got any, leave them in the Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram comments, let us know. But we're going to go back to front bench or flop. Front bench or flop. So you touched on it a little bit, and I did interrupt you and I tried to stop you. It's because of what we had planned. Front bench or flop. So wealth tax.
Front bench or flop.
Is a wealth tax with the premise that above 1 billion, it's 2%, and above 10 million, it's 1%. Does that work? Floor's open, and I'll see what you're saying if I disagree.
It's a brilliant concept to put forward from a leftist. I'll give you that. It ticks all the boxes. It seems great on the surface of it. The biggest argument against it is billionaires and millionaires, more so billionaires, leaving the country. I think we won't understand the magnitude of that until it actually happens. But let's speak more specifically about how you can actually implement a wealth tax, because it's way more easier said than done.
Yeah.
These billionaires, I think we all need to comprehend how much money billions of pounds are, and the amount of different places this money is in. It's not just in one account. Everyone can have access to it.
And just to talk about, it's difficult to do. I mean, I was watching Daniel Priestley on LBC, and he said, if I raise money for a business that's got a valuation of 10 million, or let's say 20, right? Does that mean that 10 million is now subject to the charge? It's a valuation. No one has 10 million pounds. Do you know what I'm trying to say? It's a bit of a, how do you categorise that?
It is a grey area, and the financial system is so complex.
Yeah.
You would need to look into the minutest of details. The Treasury would have to. I think they've tried to ration away those of higher income specifically. We've seen them do with VAT on private schools.
Yeah.
You identified those who have the capability to spend and send their children to private school have the money as well. I think Greens, along with that, are looking to stunt investment in the UK, along with their bringing capital gains tax online with income tax.
Yeah.
If they want to do that as well as the wealth tax, I think you're taking a massive amount of productive potential
Yeah, for sure.
out of the economy. But I'll pop a question back to you. Let's look at the wealth tax. How would that be beneficial in society? What would it look like? Would billionaires be more willing to pay higher taxes if they knew where their money was going, what public services are being
And that's what I want to give my main opinion on here is I don't think that, obviously we've said it's so complex, either of us are qualified to say how it could work, if it would work. You know, Rachel Reeves doesn't know if it would work. I think the better point to discuss is where that money would go. So the reason I'm not in favour of the wealth tax is because of the current people campaigning for it. So I think Gary Stevenson, again, he was on LBC and he said it's looking 25 to 30 billion pounds, right, it would raise. Our welfare bill, for example, is growing exponentially. Would anyone be, people be in favour of a wealth tax if it went into things that were deemed, if it went into the NHS, great. But if it went into the welfare bill, what was the point in the first place in kicking up all the fuss? You're going to have some people leave the country. We don't know the number and the impact.
Yeah.
But is it worth it? I just think that, I have conservative values and they're currently talking about cutting the welfare bill. I just think that if Zach Polanski got his wealth tax, I don't think it would just be put into something that, is already a problem in the UK.
Of course, and let's not forget that tax is a contractionary effect on the economy. The only way that this could come to some sort of positive fruition would be spending it correctly and being transparent, which is a massive contingency plan for the government, which historically shows that they won't be able to implement.
Yeah, right, let's go for it then. You absolutely messed it up in the first episode, so I want to hear it a bit better this time. The wealth tax, as proposed by Gary Stevenson.
As proposed on the surface of what it's going to be.
Gary Stevenson, Zach Polanski, right?
Of what we know right now.
Yeah. Front bench or flop?
I'm going to go for a flop.
You flopping?
Yeah, flopping.
And again, back-to-back weeks that we're going to agree with each other. I'm sure there'll be something we, butt heads over. Yeah. Flop. Yeah. For the reasons I said, that not because I don't think it can be executed. I think it probably can. I have no idea how. But I think that the money wouldn't be enough money to make a dent in the amount we're spending as a government.
Of course.
I actually heard from my university lecturer today that government spending is 44% of GDP. There's been 3 times since World War II that it's been that high. The pandemic, the oil crisis in the 70s, and the financial crisis in 2008, and we're there now. That is based off last year. So I don't know. I don't think it would be a drop in the ocean, Alex. But so with flop. And actually, that brings us to the end of episode 3 of the Very Backbenchers. Yeah. So it's been a good one, talking both Green and Reform and the BBC, touching on that as well. You got thoughts on any of what we've discussed today, please leave them in the comments. We love to respond to comments, potentially bring it up in the next podcast. Or any ideas of anything you want us to talk about that's currently going on, do let us know, and we'd love to do it. So thank you very much, Alex. That'll be the end of the episode.
Join us next week for another Front Bench or Flop, where we'll be both saying flop again.
Hopefully not. But thank you very much.
Bye.